Waiting for the recording, and we'll go back in. Cool, great. So we talked a little bit about the fundamentals of the cache module. Just as a recap, we talked about auto-rec as the process that bridges the bank module to the cache module, pushing in transactions, excluding summaries. We talked about the landscape of the cache module, adding, maintaining, process, inquire, and setup. We looked a little bit about using maintain templates to search for specific flows, for specific accounts, specific dates, descriptions, so on and so forth. We added cash flows in this instance to true up our balance, to initialize them. And we also looked at the daily balance tool that allows us to just plug in a balance on a given day. These are definitely foundational concepts to the cache module. In terms of the bread and butter of Kyriba, the most commonly used tool, we're now going to head over to the cash position worksheet, which is an aggregation of all the cash flows that come from the bank statement, all the transactions that come from the bank statement, as well as your forecasts. Okay. So let me give you a quick review of how the cash position worksheet functions. And I'm going to try to use our account group here and see if this works. Hopefully it doesn't bomb out. Excellent. Okay, so setting up the worksheet first and foremost, you can see we're going to select our entities. We have a bunch of filters here. We're going to dive into each one of these and make some tweaks. But for just this purpose right now, let's just get a sense of what it is we're about to look at. So I'm going to focus in on from the 11th through the 12th. Make sure we're looking at actuals. And let me just make one little tweak here. All right, wow. All right, somebody did some color coding there. Let's fix that. No one wants to see that. All right, so here is one example of a cash position worksheet. We have our 4 accounts data coming into the system, coming into this worksheet, and we could see a collection of our activity by flow code. Okay, so this line here aggregates all the flows that are labeled plus 195. I know for this, for our mappings, I said you can plug in any flow code. Ideally, they would be plus wire, right? So we have all our wires lumped together instead of a plus 195 and a plus wire, which is, it is the same thing, but they're just labeled differently. So that's why it's great to have uniformity with our flow codes. Okay, looking at this, we could see on the 12th, we had 15,948 of plus 195s. If I want to see a little bit more detail, I can drill in or roll down, and we could see this was hitting Olivia's account. I can roll this back up, and then I can see the remainder of the wires here. So we had a few for Kaylee's account, a few for Michael's, and a few more for Olivia's. Same idea with the other flow codes. You can roll them out, see the detail. We can even click on any cell. This is a dynamic tool that allows us to drill in and see the activity on a given day for a given flow. So if I wanted to click in, let's click in on these wires. Now I can see all the wires that occurred for the specific accounts I filtered for, as well as the specific date range that I targeted. And then from here, you can do analysis, you can pivot, you can drill in further, click into the cash flow, see all the details that came off the bank statement, and understand why every transaction occurred. If we think about what we just added previously, on the 11th, we added a bunch of balance initialization flows. You can see them here. So that we closed on the 11th at $677,000. Therefore, this number comes up to the top on the 12th. Whatever we close with is what we should open with the following day, barring any kind of like bank corrections that come in on a file. And then we can see the activity that occurred over that period of time, leaving us with a cumulative deficit of $65. If we push this date out to the 13th, we'll see we start it with negative $65 on the 13th, and then we'll see any activity that occurred. Right now, we are just looking at actuals. How do I know that? Well, first and foremost, I set up a template to only show me actuals. But secondly, you can see we have check marks here. This green check mark indicates that this is an actual, i.e. a transaction from a prior day bank statement. We'll talk about what the different flows look like in a few. Right now, I just want you to get a sense of what a worksheet looks like, only looking at actuals. Any questions so far? You can see I just added a subtotal. So you can see the system will throw out these, we'll throw a sum sign and then this blue bar to allow us to see the net collections and disbursements on a given day, which can also be useful if we want to just get a high level summary. We can also choose to hide some of the detail. Again, if we just want to see these totals, you can right click and select display hide detail lines. And then we're just going to get opening, total collection, total disbursement, aka in and out, and then final. One of my biggest pet peeves about this worksheet is that out of the box, they spell the word balance wrong. Remember, English major here? We can fix that and should fix it as setup for any of our databases. So let me fix that real quick. This is called a system flow code. You could see it's spelled B-A-L-A-C-E. Let's fix that. And refresh. Now you can see it's spelled correctly. Phew. All right. How are we doing here? Does this make sense so far? Does this look good? How's the cat doing?
Cat's
All right.
doing great.
Excellent. Gonna be a treasure any day now. Any questions about what we're seeing here? Does this look kind of self-explanatory?
Yeah, I'm good.
So you can see the benefit of having uniformity with our flow codes, right? And translating into one specific language. Because imagine this was 300 different BAI codes and they all had a plus or minus in front of it. One, the worksheet would be an absolute nightmare, right? It would just be really hard to understand like what happened on a given day. And two, we wouldn't be grouping like terms, right? Like we could have a 195, 193, 197, 191. They're all wires. Why in the world would we need 4 different rows, right? Ideally, everything is just called plus wire. And I can even change this one right now just by drilling in, clicking into the flow, clicking plus wire. And now I click apply. And now look, all our wires are lumped together. Much better. Okay. Same thing with these. I can rename these ACH. And then there's no ambiguity. You could send this to anyone. They'll see these are ACH payments. Okay. Something funky happened here, actually. Oh, we have more of this negative stuff. We got to look at our mapping and see what happened there. See how these are in the collection bucket, but for some reason Same thing with this. These are labeled as collections, as plus 495, as minus ACH. Maybe our cash flow codes are set up wrong. Let's check that real quick. Yeah. See how the cash flow code was set up as a collection? That is wrong. I'm sure I can't delete that. No. Okay. Fix that later.
Quick question. ACH, is that overhead?
Like what is an ACH?
Yeah.
Automated clearinghouse is what it stands for. It's just a payment type. When you get like your paycheck, you know how it's sent from Clearsulting directly to your bank account, unless you get like a physical check. The way Clearsulting sends you your money is via ACH.
Okay.
The distinction, the main like differentiator between ACH or the other common payment type is wire. And the main difference, there's many differences, but the main difference is wire. If somebody sends you funds via wire, you have them in your account within seconds. ACH, it often takes at least a day for the funds to actually hit your account. That's why when you pay your bills on your bank portal, you can't say, take this money out of my account today. You always have to say like, okay, the funds will clear 2 days from now. You always have a buffer. So if you have a payment due on the 19th and you realize today, if you don't want to get charged interest, you'll probably have to wire the funds. You won't be able to ACH it because the bank won't receive the money in time.
Do all ACHs and wires have to go through the Fed first, or?
Wires have to go through the Fed. Well, Fed wires do. ACH is through the automated clearinghouse, which has some governmental oversight. Might be. This is part of the who's doing the payments section of the CTP textbook. Anyone remember what chapter they got? It's spelled out in the CTP who owns what type of system. I think the Fed does have oversight over the ACH system, but I'm not sure. Okay. So this is one view of the cash position worksheet. It's pretty great because it gives us all the detail, all the inflows and outflows in one consolidated view. And as we saw, it's very dynamic. You can manipulate data really quickly. We can double click on a column to see everything that happened on a given day, right? And then we could say, all right, show me per account, just with a simple pivot. And then we could also click totals to see multiple days of data. This is just one view of a cash position worksheet. So you see here it says by flow. I could switch this view and show things by budget code instead. Let me turn on some of our groupings here. Let's turn all these on. All right. So if we look at things by budget code, this gives us new insights into what occurred on a given day. So we have wires, but we also have those Oracle AP payments. So these are Olivia, you picked these, right? This is a budget code. So we're not just saying, okay, these transactions were just like wires, but they were also wires for our accounts payable department. Or these are ACHs, whatever. So this is just a different view that allows us insights into the reason, the why for payments, not just the how. Remember that why, how distinction that we talked about between flow and budget? So it's a very similar layout, but it just gives us new insights. And often clients will default their worksheet to show budget code instead, because it's a more meaningful description of activity. Now you'll see there's also this other bank collection. All of these are here. They get lumped in this other bucket because the budget code is empty. So the budget code didn't get mapped for some reason. So when we're looking at a worksheet, often at the beginning of an implementation, you'll have almost all the activity in other because the client is still working out how their mapping is going to be configured. But the end goal is to have little to no day-to-day activity here so that all their flows, every transaction is categorized in some meaningful way. So this is going to be heavy at the beginning, and it should be light by the time the client is signing off on Kyriba. Does that make sense? One other view is by balance. There's this budget layout. We're not going to get to it. It's like a customized view of your budget codes. But that would take us down a rabbit hole. The last is by balance, and this is fundamentally different. So what you could see here is more traditionally like a bank view of transactions. So it's account by account, shows the inflows and outflows for a given account day by day. So here, there's a different way of slicing and dicing the data. We can see this is kind of set up a little peculiar. Hold on. Yeah. So here you have a similar option to drill into the data. So if I wanted to see what happened in Kaylee's account on a given day or given days, I would just click on this little drop down and it will show me, okay, on the 11th, one cash flow balance initialization, on the 12th, quite a bit more. Again, dynamic. You can scroll up, you can drill up or down. This would just suppress everything because we don't have any subtotals. You could drill in, see all the data, roll back out. What you also have available is the ability to subtotal. So if I wanted to see, let's see if that works. If I wanted to see the account group, I could put like 7 different account groups here, and Kyriba will throw a line beneath it showing me which accounts fall in which account group. So now I can neatly see y'all are in the class of 22 account group. If we had a class of 21, they would fall beneath you. Okay. You can also subtotal by countries, banks. You can imagine right now we only have 4 accounts, so this isn't super useful. But if you have a global cash position with hundreds of bank accounts, you can quickly say, show me country by country my cash holdings, and that's incredibly useful. Okay. Any questions thus far? When we set up this template, if we're in flow code view or budget code view, we have to set up a conversion currency. We have to tell the system this worksheet needs to be in one currency. Why? Because Kyriba is lumping together like transactions. So it wouldn't, if the fees were in 10 different currencies, how would it roll up, right? Because €1 plus $1 does not equal 2 currency dollars, right? So we have to tell the system, translate everything to USD or GBP or whatever currency we want to see this view in. Okay. When you're in balance view, you do not need to convert everything to one currency. Why? Because each account has its own functional currency. So you can view everything in its native account, or you can say, yes, convert everything to US dollar. That will likely be that will likely be a quiz question when you take your test. So where do you need to translate on a cash position worksheet? If you're using budget and flow. Why? Because you're grouping together transactions across lots of different accounts, which might be lots of different currencies. balance, we're showing a row by row breakdown of each account in their functional currency if we'd like. Okay. Any questions about the cash position worksheet before we show how the nuts and bolts of the template? Easy enough? Sort of, maybe. Cool. All right. Let's build one of these out from scratch. Anyone want to take the wheel? Anyone feeling brave? I'll walk you through it. All right. You know what? I made everyone else display. I guess it's my turn. CPW, Bootcamp, J22. Lots of tabbing to move quickly. Get an ergonomic mouse, by the way. I don't know if you guys have ever seen these. So you don't have hand cramps from holding a mouse all day. Highly recommend it. It's a game changer. All right. Let's get off mute and just help me walk through this real quick. Are you laughing at my creepy mouse? what's
Oh no,
funny?
Josh was saying his mouse was $12.
My mouse was like 20 bucks on Amazon, and it really is a peculiar looking thing. Like I was really intimidated by it, but it is like I would actually have hand cramps at the end of the day, just holding my mouse for like 9 straight hours. And this made it a lot better. Little things, treat yourself. All right. So where are we headed? What's the first thing we need to do for our bootcamp CPW?
Add our accounts.
Yeah.
Yep. So how should we do it?
Select.
Can you do the
Yeah.
account group or will that not work right now?
Pardon?
Can you do the account group or will that not work right now?
It will work. It's just the one report. So I'm going to select this, double click, saves. We have a bunch of sub filtering options. So let's say this account group had like 150 accounts. So we say, you know what? We only want to see one company's accounts within that group. We can narrow down our search even further. Okay. So if I wanted to just see, for instance, Kaylee's company, it would say from this group, show me the accounts that are attributed to Kaylee's company. We don't want to do that because we want to see everyone's accounts, but that's just one instance or use case of using these sub filters. Let's hop to presentation. Amount unit. Always want to show things in unit. I've never seen a use case for showing things in the tens or hundreds or thousands place. Just very bizarre. Or cents. It's just going to move the decimal point over. So never seen that, probably never will. Currency, what is this for? Just talked about it a second ago.
Budget and flow.
Flow.
Yep, the budget and flow views translates to a single currency. Currency rate, this is just like what source are you using to translate, like what market rate provider. So there's lots of different ways you can bring in interest or FX rates into the system. Let's not focus on this. The default setting is fine. And it's asking what rate do you want to pull? We'll pull the latest rate. Currency rate type, you can also say like, show me pick the rate source I want. Don't even worry about that. You can leave it blank. It'll just default to the default rate source. Okay. Forecast detail, we're going to get to in a little bit, so we can skip that. Bank detail, you could see you can break out your intraday flows from your actual flows. This might be useful. We could see what that looks like in a few minutes. But for my money, if the transaction occurs today, I already know it's intraday. And if it occurs prior to today, I know it's not intraday. So I usually just say aggregate. But if you click differentiate, it's going to color code the intradays. The worksheet can get pretty colorful. And as you can tell, I'm pretty averse to lots of colors. But we'll see what it looks like in a few minutes. if we differentiate them. Totals, you can select any of these and like play around with them. The view gets really busy. Best practice for my money is to choose the third option. So just by default, always go to the third. It's just going to be the cleanest looking worksheet. You could play around with the different views and you'll probably see very quickly why I'm recommending this one. Code grouping. Anyone recall when we talked about levels of specific codes or tiers?
Is that like it groups by cash flow code first, then budget code?
It almost. It has to do with one of those two codes. Which codes can you roll up or down into a hierarchy?
You can roll cash flow codes into budget codes.
You don't. You usually just assign a cash flow code and a budget code. Like when you think about your mapping, you said like minus wire, minus Kyriba, or minus payroll, something like that. Those codes sit next to each other, but they don't roll up or down into one another. Budget codes roll. You might remember this breakdown where we said budget codes are the most granular foundational descriptor that we can assign. And then you can roll them up into higher levels, grouping codes and parent codes. So if we wanted to see the middle grouping codes, like we don't want to get super granular, but we don't want to get very superficial. We want to be somewhere in the middle. You could set up your worksheet to do that by saying group to level 1. If we want budget codes by default, we say do not group codes. If we want the highest level view possible, we say show us level 2. Does that make sense? Okay. We could adjust our column width. We can adjust the number of digits we'd see for decimals. No need to do that. Default position. Which view would you like best? Flow code, budget code, or balance code, or balance view? What are we feeling? Who cares? Balance it is. So you can hard code the worksheet to show one specific view as soon as you launch it. And then as we saw, you can just toggle between those views really quickly, but we always pick at least the default. Traditionally, we show by budget, but you could also show by balance if that's the client's preference. We can also set up subtotals. Remember, we saw that you can subtotal by country, company, bank. If you don't want subtotals at all, you would just say account across the board. But if we wanted to see, let's just do account group. And then it will give us a subtotal of all our accounts in our account group. There are some, sorry about that. There are some other options here. You can change your columns. You saw before when you roll down a specific view, I said, show me cash flows. So there's lots of little things you can play with here, but the key ones are what we just covered. Moving across, this should all start to look extremely common now. Period is where we set our dates. So I want to just hard code this for this demonstration between the 11th and 12th. Therefore, I'm just keying in those numbers. What date do we want to use, transaction or value? Doesn't matter for right now. Traditionally, we do value date though. It doesn't matter right now because all our transactions have the same date. But by default, we select value because that's the date that treasurers care about, whereas accountants look at transaction date. Multi-frequency. We don't have to worry about this too much, but if you wanted to show a view that said, show me 10 days first, show me like 10 days out, and then start showing me like week by week view. So show me 10 weeks after that. And then after that, show me a month by month view. You could set up the view to be a longer term worksheet. You think if you're going like 3 months out, you're not going to know what day a specific payment's likely going to happen, but you'll probably know what week or what month. So as we start working outwards and we start dealing with forecasts, you might want to leverage multi-frequency to just give the client a sense of when something's going to happen, as opposed to a day-by-day view, which is going to be too detailed to be useful. Weekdays, if it's global, you would probably keep Saturday and Sunday on. We're just dealing with US, so we turn Saturday and Sunday off. So therefore, if we do like a 10-day view, Kyriba will skip Saturdays and Sundays from that view. Nature, what do we care about right now?
Actuals.
So let's turn these off. We could actually keep intradays on for a minute because I'm going to show you what they look like. And everything else you can just leave as is, or these two columns. Colors I also recommend leaving off. Indicators are the ways that we roll up or down, or we include subtotals for different views. So you could see, like right now for flow codes, I want to see all my subtotal of collections, subtotal of disbursements, same thing with budget codes essentially. All right, then we launch this. Here's our view. Remember we said default is by balance, right? We can turn our translation off if we wanted to. We have a subtotal as we asked. Where did we ask that? Presentation mode, right? We said subtotal by account group. And then our date range is 11 through 12. Again, if we want to pivot between views, just a simple click. And all our data is laid out for us. Easy? Good. We talked a little bit about intraday versus prior day. Let's just talk about it. We set this up to differentiate the two. Let's just right now add a cash flow. So again, this is a dynamic tool. We don't have to go to add a cash flow and do this in a separate screen. I could just merely click here and say add a flow. And Olivia, I'm going to use your account. And I'm going to say add an intraday. Let's say you hit the lottery today, you won $1 million. Congratulations, it's your big day. And we'll do so this is an intraday. So let's go and click apply. Now you can see $1 million applies to our worksheet. What else happened? If we have a sense of color, I hope we saw something happen.
Our balance has changed.
Our balance has changed, but look at that $1 million that we just added. What's different about it?
It's like purple or blue, like very light.
Yes, exactly. It's purple. So it's still a check mark, right? We talk about this icon. Check mark means it comes from the bank. But because it's purple, that is the system telling us this is an intraday. Why is it doing that? Because we told it in the presentation tab to differentiate intradays and actuals. If we hate the purple and we say we're smart enough to figure out intradays fall on current day, you would never say that to a client. But if we say we don't need the color coding to tell us to differentiate, we can aggregate, click go. Let's go back to the flow view. Or was it by budget? And now our $1 million for the 13th is lumped together with all our actuals and is no longer color coded. Clear? Preference? What do we like better? You guys like the purple? Oh, okay, fine. Cool. Excellent. So that's the cash position worksheet. Very, very important tool. Every treasurer is going to focus in on this, want it exactly to their liking. There's a lot more that we can play with, but I just wanted to make sure we had a good sense of how it works. Last call for questions on the CPW. Okay. All right. So we're gonna talk a little bit about forecasting. Let's see how we're doing on time here. Okay, excellent. So let's spend about 50 minutes talking about forecasting, break for lunch, do an exercise, and then come back. I'm actually hopping a hair ahead. So we talked about the CPW. The other key concept of the cash module is the reporting library. I want to just make sure we're familiar with one key report that the test will certainly cover. So this is under tasks and reports, report library, cash daily, and then cash balance by period. So the cash balance by period is sort of what it sounds like. It'll show you all the different balances you have over a defined period of time. And then you can slice and dice that data however you need to. So if we took your accounts really quickly, we build a new report real quick. So it's labeled, call it demo or call it bootcamp 22 cash here. Oh, oh, beautiful. All right. Again, blast through these who we care about here. Our class of 22 account group. You can probably see the value of having an account group. Can you imagine how painful it would be every single view to pick those 4 accounts? And we only have a few accounts here, like 100. If we had 1,000, that would be incredibly painful. Period. Let's do the same thing we've been doing. Let's do the 11th through the 13th. You can say for a report like this, show me a balance on a weekly basis. Why is that important? Why do treasurers care about that? They want to see if there are dramatic peaks and valleys on their balances, especially if they're holding foreign currencies. They like to hold a specific amount at a given time. And if you go above or beyond that threshold, you want to know. This report's structured a little differently from other reports we looked at. You can just see the presentation tab is where you're going to see the most variability, right? Like the most ways to present your data differently. The test likes to ask a lot of questions about this report and this tab specifically. So let's just go through this. The account format is unit, right? Again, we don't need, why would we show our balances in the hundredths? That's just going to confuse people. We want to show decimals. We may want to show account detail. So account detail will show you the transactions that occurred, not just the balances. So how your balances actually moved. So we could turn this on or off depending on how much detail we want on this report. This column is super important. I remember when I took my test, they asked at least 2 questions about this. Display a separate counter value column. What do you think that means? What is a counter value? Goes along to the question Josh was asking earlier about arbitrage and global currencies.
It's just like a different currencies, like how much you'd have in different
Yeah,
currencies.
basically, yeah, exactly. So if we were converting currencies to GBP, let's say Clearsalt, we all moved to the UK and we took our US accounts with us. And now Mark, our CEO, said, show me how much you have in our functional currency here in the UK. We'd say, sure, here's our account balances. We're going to display a counter value column. Counter value would be GBP. And that will show him our USD holdings as well as our GBP translations. Okay. I almost guarantee you'll get a question about this column. Okay. Separate ledger. This is asking, do you want multiple like sub reports? Let me show you the difference really quickly. It's kind of hard to articulate. It's easier to see. Multiple tables for each account. So by table, I mean, you see how this has like a header, this blue bar, and then all the content falls underneath it. That is set up to say, don't show me a unique ledger. Just give me a header and then give me all the data underneath it. If you said show me a separate ledger for each account, the report is going to look like this, basically. And then it's going to give you another header, and then the next account, and then another header, and then the next account. It just gets really busy. So rule of thumb, either no unique ledger or for each entity. And our entity is saying, give me a header for class of 2022, which is a collection of all our accounts. So that would be appropriate here. It's going to say, here are all your 2022 accounts under one header. Okay. You can subgroup. Again, anytime it says order, just means subtotal. Do we want a subtotal? Probably not. We don't have enough accounts that subtotaling is meaningful. So we'll turn that off. And then the rest of this should look relatively familiar. What columns do we include? Well, you can pick lots of columns. We don't need to pick them all right now. Color coding. This can be really valuable if you want to show that you have an account that's overdrawn. You can flag that just like we did with variances. Overdrawn meaning below zero, right? So if a treasurer was getting this report every day for every account, again, same idea. They'd be able to see if they're below zero for an account and make a decision about how they want to fund it. You can also create a report that says show accounts out of a balance range. It's the same idea. You could say show me any account that's between zero. Show me any account that's not between $0 and $1 trillion. AKA show me accounts that are below zero. That's how we'd set this report up. So it would only give us our overdrawn accounts. Again, sure, it's a common question, and that's just good to know. It's a basic report that we'd set up for a client and put on a scheduler. And the rest of this, we could choose what data to include. Okay, so let's save this report. Here you go. And then let's run it. So what do we have here? On the 11th, our USD balances were the following, right, for each account. Then on the 11th again, here are our balances translated to GBP. So this is that separate counter value column we were talking about. So we know on the 11th, $677,000 translated to 498,000 pounds. Then on the 12th, everyone except Michael went down to zero. Michael is $60 overdrawn, aka $47 in pounds. And our head treasurer, let's call him Kevin, gets this report, and then he slacks or teams IMs Michael and says, Michael, I'm gonna give you $65. Make sure your account goes up to zero. Okay. Lastly, on the 13th, we could see Michael must have been vacationing or something. His account is still overdrawn. Gonna have to write him up. And Olivia, on the other hand, hit the lottery, got $1 million, bringing her total cash holdings up to $999,000, aka 735,000 pounds. So, report makes sense. Any questions? Okay. There are a variety of reports here, but we won't go into each of them. You'll have an opportunity to look through more of them. Like we'll train you on the job for those. I just wanted to hit the main one that I know they test repeatedly. Also, I slightly misled you about that account detail button. If this were unchecked, account detail doesn't turn on the transactional information. It turns on literally a listing of each account. If you turned off account detail, you see what happened. It just gave us our whole balance as a group rather than what we saw before, the detail, our balance as a group, as well as the individual accounts that sum up to this. So sorry about that. My bad. Okay. Am I moving too fast, guys? Okay. So that's the main report we have here. And that is the gist of the cash module for the test's sake. We could spend another 25 hours talking about all the functionalities in the cash module, but there's no need for what you need for the test. My mouse is bugging out. Right when I was bragging about how great my mouse is, now it's not working. It's just wonderful. The second time it's happened to me. What's going on here? Okay. I want to, yeah, my mouse is working. Oh. I want to now take us into the world of forecasting before we break for lunch and an assignment. But I can't do it right now. I actually can't escape the left corner of my screen. This is terrible. All right, did it. Nope. All right, let me stop this recording for a minute. I'm gonna sign out and come right back in. Great. Be right there.